Last time we left off, we assembled the case halves. Currently, we've got it up on a table. We've got 2 of the pistons in already. Cylinder 3 and cylinder 4 we have yet to do. We had to pull it off the stand so we could get to the back side of the motor to put the wrist pins in. So we are using CP pistons. Unfortunately, kind of like with the Manley rods, the CP pistons didn't come with a whole lot of instruction for like ring gap. So we've got our rings already filed to the correct gap, but they didn't show us where they wanted gap positioned on the cylinder or on the piston. So I found a chart for Manley pistons. It is different than the stock Subaru ring gap location, but we are currently going off of the Manley instructions. So this is going in the number 4 bore. So I have it labeled 4. I know it's upside down just because the front of the piston we've decided is going to be this way. The one thing that we used to determine what side we were going to use as front was that the top rail has a tab on it to keep it from spinning, and the Manley instructions want the top rail ring gap at the front of the piston. So that's how we determine which side would be front, or which way the piston would be facing, so we know which way is up and down. So the Manley instructions want your oil expander ring at the very bottom of the piston. So move that around. So Manley wants the bottom rail on the back side of the piston. Of course I have to move it a full almost 90 degrees, so it's gonna take a little bit. Kind of pushing it back towards me from the back side of the piston. Just gave up on the pick. Doing that so my fingers wouldn't be in the way. There we go. This is the top of the piston up here. I've got the bottom rail slightly below the center line of the wrist pin hole. You can see it's right there. This would be about center. On the top rail, it is slightly above the center line of the wrist pin hole. So I just put them, tried to get them as close to 180 degrees apart as possible. And Manley calls for the second ring to be directly at the top, and the top ring to be directly at the bottom. If there's a Subaru, they would call for the top ring to be either facing forwards or facing back, and then your bottom or your second ring being 180 degrees apart. So now that we've got all of our ring gaps positioned correctly, we've knocked in 3 of the pistons already, and we've put in all 3 of those wrist pins, so they're all connected to the rods and everything. We're going to show you how to do the last one. This is a Subaru special tool, but you can get these for whatever size bore you need. Unfortunately, this did not work for us because these are slightly larger than stock bore. So we are using a band style piston ring compressor. It's not exactly desired. It's easier to break rings using these, but we've made it work so far, so we're going to continue on using that. So I've got the piston already in there. It's just barely started. None of the rings are actually in the block yet, and this isn't quite tight. So I'm going to finish tightening this up. Let's see if I can get one more click out of it. There we go. All right. Make sure she's square on there. Kind of gently. Make sure the piston's in straight as well. So hopefully you can see that. We're gonna tap it in. in. Knock it the rest of the way in. And then our cameraman will come over here. So you can see the top of the rod in there where the wrist pin goes through. We're gonna knock that piston down so far enough to where you see the skirt coming down. You can see the hole for the wrist pin. We're gonna get it close by eye. All right, so that's pretty close. Okay, so now we've got the piston fairly close to being all the way in. I'm fortunate enough to have access to some Subaru special tools. This is an aligner pin. I'm sure you can find them elsewhere. I'm sure someone makes them. But you stick this in through the hole and that helps align the rod and the piston. So I'm gonna stick this through. Now the piston isn't quite straight, so I'm gonna kind of just nudge it over with that. Kind of wiggle. All right, so that's all the way through. Now I'm touching the backside wrist pin clip. So now we've got it all lined. I'm gonna pull this out carefully, not to move the rod around. And the piston and the rod are perfectly aligned now. Got our wrist pin with some assembly lube. All right, now I got this nice and lubed up. And I'm gonna stick my pinky in there. And stick your button. Gently. Let it in. It's not quite all the way in. Might take a few taps. Don't force it. If it's not going in, it's not going in. Take this guy. There, it's slid in all the way. And you'll kind of hear it when it hits the backside wrist pin clip. So now we'll take this, the needle nose. This hole is a little bit harder than the rest because it's much farther in the block than the rest of them. You gotta be careful. All right, now I got it in there. So now I'll take him and just kind of nudge it in all the way. And you heard it clip in there. It's kind of hard to see, but it's fully seated in the groove.
Now that we have the short block assembled, in our next video we'll continue by assembling the long block.
Thanks for watching.